Happy solstice, one and all, to all who celebrate. Today, I am joined by the venerable Jez Hunt, who's kindly agreed to bless us with his solstice knowledge on this, the day of the winter solstice. Let's bring him in. How you doing, brother? You good?
Hello, how's everyone doing? Yes, hello. You keeping well?
Aye, mate. Aye, I am actually all the better for seeing you as well. But as I was saying
Good
just before
you.
we went on, I got up at sunrise, like the solstice swat that I am, and went down and got into nature and just soaked it all up and set some intentions for the new year. Really, I suppose we could call it.
Excellent.
So what I'm wanting to do today is like obviously you're a wealth of knowledge, man. Like for all, like a lot of things, but certainly about things like the solstice. So if there's people in the comments and you want to ask Jez anything in particular, feel free. I'll obviously be doing the same, and I've got a bit of imagery to throw up on the screen, like this one, which is for audio people. The date this year, Friday, December the 22nd, at 3:27 a.m. This is the closest we could
Oh,
possibly get to doing a solstice show. Jez, just want to mention as well, your job is Ancestor Leathercraft, and there'll be links in the description for people to follow as well. Check out Jez's work; it is absolutely amazing. You do
oh.
stuff for like TV and film, don't you?
It's been mostly that over the past few years. So yeah, because it's like you end up on something for 8 or 9 months. So
Yeah,
yeah,
man.
it's been mostly sort of film and TV work. Although this year's been dead with the strikes in America, the writers and
Oh
actors.
yeah.
Good on them. Like I'm glad they did it. Uh, but it's meant that like because there's so much American production money in the UK, it's meant that
Mm.
well 75% of crews, British TV and film crews, have had no work this year. I managed 6 weeks, so
Wow,
not
that's
been a
crazy,
great
man.
year. But
I
next
mean,
year
what?
it should all be started off soon, and hopefully something will kick in, and I'll get on something good.
Defo, man. I just want to point out as well, it's always me bringing this up. You never like agree to come on the thing, the predication that I promote anything or will promote anything. You always just go, yeah, cool, that sounds great. Let's talk. I
Yeah,
just want to
man,
make that clear,
I'm
but
always
also I don't
happy.
want to miss the opportunity for people to understand like what you actually do outside of knowing things.
Because yeah, he knows stuff.
He knows stuff. So, right, I'll just put this up on the screen just to start off. From the National Trust, obviously at National Trust. Winter solstice is one of the oldest winter celebrations in the world and signals the astronomical start of winter. A pagan custom is to watch the sunrise or sunset on the shortest day. Jez, my friend, why is this a pagan custom?
Oh, crikey. Weirdly, it's an almost global custom as well, rather than even just a pagan one. It, from what we can tell, it almost certainly dates back to the Neolithic, which is when we stopped being hunter-gatherers and sort of settled down and started farming. So it seems to have been a thing that was regarded as important amongst early agricultural societies. Uh, a lot of the surviving monuments from then, because it's hard to know what people believed except through what we have left over. And most things, anything fabric or leather or whatever is going to just rot away. So what we have left is monuments of sorts. So places like Stonehenge in the UK, and there's a barrow called Stony Littleton, and there's a more famous one of Newgrange in Ireland. All seem marked up to mark the midwinter solstice. There you go. It's Newgrange, great big barrow, and on midwinter, on the solstices itself, there's above the doorway of it is like a little light box, and on midwinter the sun hits it like this morning, the sun hits it in such a way that it shoots up the corridor and hits a light on the very back. There you go, on the very back of the. It's good, this. You're all right on the ball with the fucking images. right on the back of the barrow itself. Um, the amazing thing about it is it's on a slope, and they managed to build it in such a way as it takes into into account of that slope for the light to hit the back. I watched a thing a few years ago where a guy was simulating the effect of that sunlight and playing a drum inside, maybe.
Mhm.
And what that does is it throws loads of dust up into the light of the sunbeam as it's coming through, as you playing like that, and the vibrations in the air from the drums creates a zigzaggy line in the air like a laser beam. And on the walls inside of that tomb, there are loads of zigzag lines carved in. And this is a tomb that's as old as the pyramids. Like it's really ancient, like 7,000 years old, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, so that the survival of these things and the alignment at Stonehenge, and like I said, there's a barony of Bath called Stony Littleton, would indicate that it was very important to people from that period. And it's when we get agriculture in, it's the very middle of winter. You're never going to get a shorter day and a longer night, basically. And it seems that was an important thing to mark, because it's where the year sort of turns into the next stage of it. So you'd want to have a big celebration, really. And part of that as well is knowing that, like, you're not going to be doing anything for a few months. It's too cold. Lock yourself away. Do whatever, like, handcrafts that people would do and prepare for the next year. It's that sort of idea that things are born in darkness as well, which seems to continue on amongst a lot of early pagan cultures, Iron Age cultures. The Romans change it later on to the idea that the day starts as the sun rises, whereas amongst the earlier cultures and the Iron Age cultures, everything starts in darkness, much like seeds start in darkness and babies start in darkness. Like that's the beginning of things. Things start in darkness, so the day starts as the sun goes down.
So, Jez, why is the ancient ways that we're describing here, how is it relevant to now? Like, why is this important to us?
Well, I mean, we're still on the same planet as they were. We still think in the same way. There is still an importance, I think, built into people that in the dark of winter, like when it's most miserable and horrible, I think there's something vital about a celebration of light in that, in some way. Like we still continue it now, fairy lights and things like that. That aspect of Christmas, I think, still represents that kind of earlier idea that we need something to kind of lift our spirits and kind of remind us it's not just going to be dark forever. At some point, the touring will be gone. I mean, at some point, winter will be gone. It's I think it's still important in us, that sort of seasonal change. It was obviously vitally important during tons of agriculture, to the point where they decided to mark it with stone monuments, amongst other things. Obviously, they weren't just for that; they were for a lot of other things. But that is part of it.
In terms of the monuments themselves, let's say Newgrange, do we have an idea of like how long it took to build?
Quite a long time. That's part of, much like Stonehenge as well, as part of like a sacred landscape. You've got lots of other burial mounds around that area. What's really weird with amongst the many weird things at Newgrange, it was like in ruins until relatively recently. There was a big rebuild of it in the 1970s. Some of it is a bit of a controversial thing, but the inside is pretty much as was. Some of the outside, a lot of people get kind of annoyed by the reconstruction of that. I think the archaeologists did a pretty good job. It could be controversial. Anyway, sorry, it's me going off on a waffle. For like centuries, that whole place had collapsed. You can see photos of it, and it's just like a lumpy mound. You can't even make out the sort of doorway and the light box above it properly on that.
I wasn't aware of that.
And there was a folk tale still going around at that point that the sun would rise and shine down in it on midwinter, but like that hadn't happened for centuries, but it remained in the sort of folk tales of people there. So like when it was excavated and they realised that was the case, it kind of blew people's minds. Well,
I watched yesterday, Jez.
I forgot what your question was.
No, it's all right. It's just about Newgrange, but I'm just adding to what you're saying. I watched the live stream yesterday, and that was the one that you saw earlier on the screen with the light coming through. This one I'm about to put up here. That was taken from yesterday's live stream, so that was the light shining through. But I noticed today that it was a bit overcast there, like on the actual solstice. So there was no such thing today. But that's like one of the most up-to-date pictures that we were seeing on the screen just now from the government of Ireland.
It comes back through. You can see with that picture that it's looking out towards the door, and it comes through and hits the wall at the back of the dome. There's a triple spiral, like a triskel, on that bit of wall at the back of it, which I think is pretty amazing. Triskells and spirals.
Tell about that. Like, tell about the spirals and the iconography at all.
In some way, and an eternity as well. Like I love spirals. I've got them on. You know, I cover everything in them. I'm a big fan of them. And at Newgrange, especially, they seem important. There's the external bit of Newgrange before you're going in has got a great huge stone that's covered in these beautiful interlocking spirals, and that seems to be a really important image for sort of earlier megalithic communities. You get them at like Long Meg as well over in Cumbria, which is a great stone circle, and various other places. It seems like a pretty universal symbol, the spiral, and the idea of a triskel version of it, which is kind of 3 spirals interlocking, ties into that idea of movement even more. You know, if you've got 2 opposite forces, they'll just bang up against each other. If you've got a 3rd force, it turns it into a big movement-y thing. It seems to be
man.
And
so you
always
mentioned
by modern paganism as well.
Which
does have roots back to the past, but a lot of stuff that are relatively new things added into it.
You mentioned there's a lot of this stuff like around the world. Do we see the same kind of symbolism like around the world, like the spirals and things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean they go on everywhere amongst just about every culture that where we've got evidence of these things from the past, and from those sort of cultures that didn't meet European cultures until relatively recently. So, you know, spirals crop up throughout the First Nations of America and the Polynesians and New Zealand. You know, Maori tattoos famously very spirally. It seems to be a universal human image, which is cool. It's one of the reasons why.
Real. So this like a more contemporary thought. It like speaks to like Jungian archetypes and things, and like that's my first thought when I'm hearing this from you. It's like, how did cultures who ostensibly hadn't had any contact, at least not on any kind of large scale that we know about, like, you know, they're sort of representing these spirals through paintings and carvings and whatnot, roughly the same time, would that be right? But without contact. Like, my first thought is like some kind of morphogenetic field or shared consciousness that like produces this stuff at the same time.
Possibly. I mean, we're constantly pushing back the dates of the settlements of like Australia and America. We're constantly finding new things that push it back even earlier. So realistically, either people are coming up with these ideas, similar ideas in separate places, which is, I mean, that's a thing that happens. It's not an impossibility. Like, it happens all the time now. You know, that kind of zeitgeist thing, or a kind of Jungian kind of. I nearly said hive mind, but that's not the word that I'm looking for. Got it like a global consciousness, or they're images that go back even further, which means that something like the spiral, maybe if it does go back further, you're talking like 80,000 years, possibly. You know, Australia seems to be somewhere 60 to 80,000 years ago, is when that people went there for the first time. That, which is mind-bogglingly ancient. I mean, you look at something like Newgrange or Stonehenge, and these places are mad old, to put it simply. You know what I mean? Like, but at that point, when people are going into Australia and taking that imagery with them, if that's what happened, like, Britain's covered in ice at that point. Like, we're not, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, you can't live here. So yeah, that's mad old. But these things sit in people, and we know that they're important. I think, you know, that we know that they're sacred. We know that they're important, and this time of year very much ties into that idea, and rebirth, which is what the spiral could be about, maybe
Definitely.
in certain cultures.
I mean, we're touching on the sort of ritual aspects of the solstice. Do you want to speak to that? Like, what is it, and like, what does it mean?
That has probably changed over time as well, and we continue to add to it. Christmas, I would say, is an offshoot of those earlier times. Realistically, it was adopted by the early church this time of year for a festival kind of thing. The day within the Bible of the birth of Christ. Shepherds aren't out this time of year in the Middle East. It's a bit cold. So the 25th of December seems very unlikely. It seems like the church may have picked it up to marry pagan ideas to these sort of newer Christian ideas, to take them over, which is a very standard way that Christianity would kind of move through things. It's a good idea, really. So I would say like all the Christmas stuff are additions to these things, to these early celebrations. The form of these early celebrations, we don't really know. We do have some bits from some cultures. Obviously, an observation of the sun, either at sunset or sunrise, was important. Stonehenge is geared towards the sunrise and the sunset, specifically at midwinter. A lot of people go in midsummer, which is a new addition to that, possibly, because you're facing the wrong way for that, really, at Stonehenge, the alignment of it. Newgrange, definitely. It's probably tied to the idea of death in some way. Stonehenge seems very much a site where sort of death-orientated rituals seem to have taken place. There's a big graveyard area around it. There's lots of barrows and things. Whereas the more kind of life-orientated stuff at that point seems to have taken place at a place called Woodhenge. There's no Strawhenge. Whereas death rituals seem to have taken place there. Obviously, Newgrange is a barrow where burials took place. Probably not the only thing that took place there. So there seems to be this idea of death, which once again ties in with Yule and Christmas and those sorts of things. There's a reason why we still tell ghost stories, I think, at Christmas. And an idea of the veils between the worlds getting thin, maybe, and the dead being near, and remembering those who have passed over the year, and the death of the old year and the birth of the new. And it's very much tied into that kind of element of things, I think. So you get a lot of that sort of stuff that crops back up, either with a resurgence of older traditions or inventions of new ones, maybe, with things like guising and wassailing in winter, and things like the Marish Lloyd, which is the kind of weird horse skull thing you see in Wales. All that weird Wicker Man stuff. It sort of ties in with that idea of people disguising themselves either to escape evil spirits or to look like evil spirits. It's that whole melt between Halloween and Christmas.
We've talked about this before, like in Alpine cultures, there's the Krampus. Would that like cross over into those traditions too? For people who do you want to actually explain what the Krampus is first, and then we'll take it from there.
The Krampus is one of many kinds of punishment figures that you get that crop up as part of the festivities this time of year. You get figures which are beneficial, Santa being the most famous one that we have. And then you get figures who are there to punish as well, to keep people in line, basically. You get, it's the carrot and the stick approach. And for a very long time, the kind of the stick, the sort of punishment figure has been hidden away. But that's a huge resurgence now, which I rather like. And he is a very hairy figure, the Krampus, with massive horns, has cowbells hanging off him, and finds naughty children, drags them off, thrashes them with birch twigs, and drowns them potentially as well. So thoroughly sinister. The same figure crops up in a lot of stuff, and edged out of popularity. The Nazis banned Krampus instantly. But
Really?
that figure, yeah. Yeah, that
I
figure
mean,
cropped
they were
up.
kind of a cult, like they had one foot in the occult with the Brill Society and stuff like that. Was it
Yeah,
just like sort of mystical sort of traditions? Was that banned on that basis or
who
something
knows?
else?
They probably viewed him as too much competition for the Gestapo. No
Yeah.
idea. The sort of version of that in Iceland's really interesting. They have a thing called the Yule cat,
Right.
which is like a giant cat. There's no cats on Iceland. It should be
Yeah.
pointed out, but the Yule cat is a massive cat with like iron claws and razor sharp teeth, and it's huge. And if
Hmm.
you don't wear the clothes that you got at Christmas, if it sees you in old clothes, like you don't wear the clothes you got at Christmas, it'll rip you apart and devour you. So there's that kind of,
Bit
like the kind of,
disproportionate.
yeah.
That's so funny, man. Have you heard the we'll just go a little bit off piece. Have you heard the like conspiracy that's flying around Reddit? I read it like last week, and it's basically saying that a half human, half dog hybrid are the aliens, and they're going to come back on the 23rd. And all of our dogs in our houses are basically like, and I think this is a rehash of the sort of Santa Claus myth, are the grasses, and they're going to grass up to the half human, half dog hybrids, much like the elves, I would suggest. And I
Yeah,
really, really want this to happen, Jez. Like, can you
I
imagine
think
the 23rd?
I welcome our canine overlords because we've not been doing very good at it. So hopefully a load of zoanthropic dogs like can pop.
Yeah.
Weirdly, dog-headed people crop up all over the place in medieval folklore. So we're
Mhm.
just going back on a loop. The dog head. St. Christopher. St. Christopher was a dog head.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's very rarely portrayed as it now, but you can see earlier. You can sometimes find earlier images of him like carrying the Christ child and all that. And he's
Yeah.
got he's got dog head. He's often portrayed
It's
as a
interesting
dog.
because you can go back to Linda Harvey's just said what I was thinking there, Anubis in Egyptian culture.
Yeah.
You know, strange when people type that into the comments just as I'm thinking, and it feels
But
weird.
no bit.
But yeah, I mean, so for yourself, would you define yourself? Would you define yourself as a pagan or something else? Spiritual, or is there no label? How do you feel about your belief system?
I am pretty much an agnostic. I'm not sure enough about anything to claim to be a pagan or anything. I've got very pagan, like heathen leanings.
Hmm.
I find that sort of stuff really interesting. But I find all religion interesting, really. But I wouldn't say that I solidly believe in any of them.
Right.
Marcus Aurelius, who was like the Roman emperor, very popular, sadly, with the manosphere, but like he did write a lot of interesting stuff. And there's a thing that he wrote that I kind of agree with about that if the gods exist and you've lived a good life and they reward you, they're gods worth taking notice of. If the
Hmm.
gods exist and they punish you for living a good life, they're gods that aren't worth worshipping. And if the
Hmm.
gods don't exist, you've lived a good life, and that's a reward in itself. And I'm kind of down with that a bit.
I can get
Like
with that, man. That's a great way to live, I feel.
it,
It just all
yeah.
results in good, doesn't it?
That's it. It's the great mantra of Bill and Ted of be excellent to one another, dude.
That's the best mantra that's ever been created. Dust, wind, dude. So great.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Hopefully they'll still have this effect. I'd imagine even when in Bill and Ted when there's that weird future thing, they probably still have a festival this time of year. I think it's intrinsic to us through
Hmm.
from definitely from at least the Neolithic, maybe even earlier.
Yeah.
And I think we'll continue on as long as we've got a winter. I think this will continue. It's important. I think there's something
Yeah.
in humanity that makes us realise that this time of year is a special time. Like it's a good time to remember things from the past and look forward to the future and look for the light in the darkness and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think is important.
I agree, man. And like we can do on the solstice rituals on the sunrise, but also the sunset. So people have still got a chance, because this will be out. It's live now and will be out on audio pretty much straight after. So people will get this in time. I think it's something like 3:30 in the UK currently. I know people listen around the world, so wherever you get this now. What would you recommend? Like, even if it's just a simple sort of ritual, or what should people do at sunset today to set a bit of intention for the new year?
I think, given a bit of focus on things, fire seems to be quite an important thing this time of year. We have that tradition of lots of lights on Christmas trees and things like that still. I mean, ideally, shove your political leaders into giant wooden figures and immolate them. But on a slightly smaller scale, if you can't go full Wicker Man, maybe just lighting a candle and thinking about things that have gone on this year and what you might want to change, and of people that may have passed this year. And yeah, what you want to do with the forthcoming year. I think that's quite a good thing to do. Just taking that little bit of time, a bit of time to yourself, and a bit of a thought really as to quite what you want to do. It's always been regarded as a time, like I said, of where the space between the worlds get thin. It was a time of sort of trooping fairies in Ireland and things like that as well, which are always sort of tied to ideas of the dead. But also, it's a time of hope. So find a bit of positivity and something to look forward to. People would make oaths. Yule, which is a kind of Germanic variant of the festival, which would take place around now. People would make oaths then earlier on as to what they were going to do for the year. There's a fairly good chance that New Year's resolutions are a variant of that, because it was like, I will do this thing, but they'd swear on it. They'd swear on a kind of a great sort of piece of jewelry or something like that, like a torque or something, to Thor, and be like, this year I will go and kick the shit out of the Snowfell trolls, or like burn Lindisfarne to the ground or whatever. And those festivals were massively important. There's a king called King Haakon the Good, who enforced a certain amount of beer that everyone had to drink around that time of year, and how much horse you have to eat as well. And so, yeah, people would take these oaths. So I think if you're having a little sort of moment for yourself, a little celebration or whatever, thinking in that way is a good thing of like, what am I going to do in the forthcoming year? Like, what do I want to try and achieve, really?
I've got you. Like somebody, Joanne here has said, I'm finding it all a bit hopeless at the minute. What would you recommend to maybe offset that or overcome it, or use the solstice to melt a little bit of that away?
Well, there's a pretty good chance that this is the last Christmas for quite some time that we'll have to put up with the Tories. I mean, that gives me a bit of optimism. The replacement isn't great, but it isn't going to be worse. So that's all right. Something might come out of it. It's not going to be ideal, but it's better than a poke in the eye, I guess. And we can always make the world a better place if we can. I mean, we can't change the wider world, but we can change our world. I think, like our personal world around us. And aim for the little things. I think in the case of like your oaths or whatever you want to make, your resolutions, aim for little things, aim for achievable things. If you achieve something small, that makes you realize that you can do bigger things, and it's a good hit. And I think whilst things are pretty dark and horrible, we're lucky to be alive now. We're in a time where no one's dying from, well, not massive amounts of people are dying from childbirth. You're more likely to live past the age of 5. When they built Stonehenge and Newgrange, like, infant mortality is huge. And they will look to the future. They built a thing that lasted forever. You know what I mean? You'd have people dying from fucking tooth ulcers at that point, and they still found hope in the darkness. And I think we're in a pretty lucky time, I would say.
I agree, because I feel we can change things, and I think we've all oscillated wildly between the punch of like left, right, and uppercuts of these overlapping crises that we've all been having to face. And it's bewildering and it's overwhelming and it's been hard. But one of the reasons why I wanted to focus on this with you today and put some of this good energy out in the world, one, it's to offset the stuff that we have to cover. We have to, you know, cover some of the darker things, but also it's important, and I say this all the time, to take some time for yourself. Take some pause and reflection. Like my partner and I did this morning. We made a point of like, I'd go out at sunrise with the dog all the time, but she made a point of coming and doing that today. We both just took a quiet moment ourselves, with eyes closed, to met the sun and just set our personal intentions. I haven't even talked about what they were. We just did it silently and just cracked on. And I'd encourage anybody who's listening to this, you can do that with the sunset today as well. And that in GMT is 3:30 around about that time. So you can still catch that, man, and set some intentions for hope for the future. I fully believe
let the old world die and let the new world come in. I think is no bad thing.
I agree. I fully believe that, definitely. And sometimes we've got to just like approach things a little bit differently and just get out the way. I feel like one of the things I've discovered about myself is I've always tried to push, when sometimes it's best to just get out of the way of something and let it run its natural course. So that could be for good or for bad. And there is a lot of bad stuff to focus on. And I would just suggest everybody takes a time, even if it's just the little things, as we've just illustrated there with Joanne, to just focus on what they are. We've got our health for the most part, a lot of us, or at least we're here. And even if it's just to witness the bloody apocalypse, that's an absolute privilege, man. Like,
absolutely.
You know,
people have been prophesying the end of the world since the world started. Like, if we're about for when it happens, that's the best. That like, witness me, brother, on the road to Valhalla, shiny and chrome.
Nice, the shining path of crows. That's what we need.
We should be so lucky to be about at the end of the world. But I think it is important. You can get swamped by it. You can get swamped by it all. You can get swamped by all that darkness. But like, take time and look at the light and give that a bit of a focus. And don't feel guilty about it either. Like, people in really horrendous situations have no choice but to think about those horrendous situations. If you're not in the middle of Gaza, you're in a privileged position, and you have the responsibility, I think, to a certain extent, to take the time out that they can't, to focus on yourself, because your strength is part of the strength for those people. Like, you need to be strong for those people, and part of that is focusing on yourself. Like, you've got to take a breather in. Like, you've got to step back from something to get a view on it and be strong enough to carry on. I think focusing on yourself occasionally is something you should do without feeling guilty about, because that gives you the strength to light for other people, maybe.
Fully, and that's a beautiful place to leave this. I always appreciate your time, Jez. I hope you realise that, and I just want to big you up as one of my people of the year. The difference that you made by, and you've just said yourself, you didn't earn as much as you ordinarily would this year, but you funded air purifiers for clinically vulnerable people. And honestly, that was one of the things that I just loved about this year, and I just wanted to. One of the last shows of the year, it's fitting that we'll mark it together, brother, on the solstice too. That was a beautiful act, and I just want you to know I think you're a beautiful man, and thank you for doing that, man.
Thank you very much. Metaphorically, maybe, not physically. I'm like a weird fucking troll.
Brother, but you look like Jez Hunt should look. That's what you look like you should look, and that's a beautiful thing, man. You know what I'm saying?
What I need is a pipe.
Fucking great stuff, man. It's all love, man, and I hope you keep coming back on again and again. As we say, big up Jez. Everybody's all hail Jez.
And thank you for carrying on doing this stuff as well, man. And the people, I tune in obviously whenever I can. And I see a lot of really good people in the comments who are quite often dealing with a lot of shit, but still being positive people, like being good people. And that's pretty good. Like, that's an impressive thing, and it's not based around you doing this as well. Like, you come on here as often as you can, even when you really cannot be asked, and do amazing things. So yeah, it's good, man. You got to be the you know, the light in the darkness and the rust on the machine cogs.
That's what I think a lot of what this is. I know I'm just keeping this going, and then ultimately, people I think are off without ending it on a negative are off just doing them because a lot of people are overwhelmed with the world right now. So
Yeah,
I'm trying to just do like a historical record, and then eventually people will catch up with this and they will get back on the horse. And I used to like feel quite resentful of this because I'm like, but you said you would be part of like changing this, but also let's have a look at these competing crises that everybody's having to deal with and show some empathy and compassion. So that's where I am today. Just like let's keep the positive flame burning in the darkness, and then light begets light, doesn't it?
absolutely. That's the best thing that we can do,
We just
really.
got to be keepers
Because
of the flame while everybody like does their thing, and I need to get beyond the judgments that I do own. I was projecting towards them, but I just felt a bit abandoned and frustrated at the start of the year. But I don't so much now, and it's nice to get there. It was part of one of the intentions I set this morning at the sunrise. It was like help me defang that anger inside myself towards people and understand and build empathy and understanding towards why they're experiencing this particular novel moment in human history in the way that they are.
yeah,
I think that's healthy for me, but for everybody. I think I was getting a bit
mhm.
toxic, but also at the same time, I think that anger was appropriate then.
Oh
I don't
God,
think it's
yeah.
appropriate now.
If you're not angry, you're not taking notice. I think to a certain
Too
extent,
true,
but
man. For real.
yeah.
I love you, brother. I'm going to wrap up now, but thank you so much for your time always.
Have
And
a lovely Christmas, everyone, and good Yule, and enjoy your solstice.
good to
Make sure you
you.
wear your new clothes so the Yule cat doesn't tear you apart.
That's the one. I do actually have last year's present for my partner's parents on, but I will go for a new T-shirt or something. So I just don't want to fight that Yule cat with the claws.
Oh no, it's a
No
massive
chance.
pussy.
And what a great way to leave it. Massive pussy.
Pussy.
All right, brother. Thank you. See you later, man. See you later. Ta-ra, brother. That was Jez Hunt there. He's literally one of my favorite people. And as the comments are showing, one of your favorite people too. What a great lad. And like I say, one of the highlights of my year was that man showing just beautiful love for all humans, putting his hand in his pocket. And as I say, the pockets for a lot of us aren't that deep, including Jez, and it created one of the most beautiful things of the year. Thank you for that. Also, thank you everybody for being here. If you would like to support our work, you can go to patreon.com/cowdaily. That's patreon.com/cowdaily. Also, links in the description for PayPal if you want to make a one-off contribution to our work. Thank you so much. Hopefully, get another one in before the arrival of the Babangida Jesus. I will play the final closing titles and get out of here. All the best. See you later. Ciao.